Mm-hmm.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, the boss, and this is maintaining frame number 50. We've done 50 of these already.
Ooh, really? Geez, I
Yeah,
I don't even remember the first one actually.
yeah. We've
It's
done
all
50. I don't
in the merch.
remember. I think that they were called HBR debate. So I think the first one was like, honestly, I think it was like Steven Crowder debating a feminist when his show was only on Thursday nights, and he would have guests on like Karen and Cassie J. And I think we went through it, but then we decided that the we would change the name so that we could cover a broader,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
a
that's right. Yeah,
broader reach of topics.
we
So
were critiquing how he debated.
yeah, and I think we did
Saturday
another
Night
one with
Football
Jordan
style.
Peterson and the woman from Channel 4.
No, wait,
So you're
Friday Night
saying, so you're
Hockey
saying,
style. Yeah. So you're saying. So you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah. And
No,
when
no.
he,
So what you're saying is
yeah. So what you're
that we
saying
should
is
organize our
along the
lives
lines
on
of
the
the
lines
lobsters.
of the lobsters. Oh. We should
So
all
and
we
that
should
was
all we
go
should
ahead.
all sing reggae in a
Yeah,
lagoon full of
that
algae.
we should under the
We
sea.
should under
But
the sea.
but I thought those were good. But the problem is that outside of like Jubilee videos, which we've done a ton of too, there isn't a whole lot of that going on as much. So we're
Yeah, the
like,
stupid
well,
is multi-flavored, it's
yeah,
multifaceted.
I think that's what it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
on today's show, we're going to be looking at an
Mm-hmm.
article from BigThink.com. I don't know if you guys remember. I used to be subscribed to the YouTube channel for BigThink, and then like they just sort of show. I mean, they have guests on with different perspectives, but it was starting to bug me because I kept seeing like uh let's say women worsting in it, and I was like, I don't think this think is that big. So I'm like not gonna subscribe and watch them anymore.
More of a mini think.
Yeah, it's kind of like a thunk or a thonk.
Yeah, it's like a we don't rise above the limbic system thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I'm smarter than you guys. I'm saying that I don't need whatever it is you're selling. And they didn't bring on like the really interesting science types, like
Mm-hmm.
and so I could at least have kept it for that. But then everything was, abortion, climate change, feminism, rape culture, toxic masculinity, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I've heard all these talking points like a million times. I don't need to subscribe to a channel to get it told to me. I don't really want a sermon. So anyway,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
bigthink.com is a website, and they have an article which kind of like leans into how I described their change. The title is the first crewed mission to Mars should be all female. Here's why. It's not about fairness, it's about using every possible advantage. So I don't know what they're going to
Okay.
get at, but apparently women are better astronauts.
Mm. Mm. X to doubt.
Yeah, pressing X it out.
Okay. So before we get into it, if you guys want to send us a message, and I really appreciate it when you do because it feels less like we're screaming into the void, please do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. It's very much appreciated to know that, you guys are out there and you're invested in what we have to say. So feedthebadger.com/justthetip. You get the benefit of avoiding YouTube's very, very Byzantine and confusing rules about what you can and cannot say, and we get the full benefit of the money because YouTube now takes about 50%, and all that ends up being taken at feedthebadger.com/justthetip is just the fees, financial fees. So it's a win-win for both of us, and you can also have a longer comment because you can put up to 2,000 characters, which is a lot. Some people have pushed that, and they found out that, we found out that the characters just won't go through because Discord has a hard limit on how many it can display. But 2,000 characters, that's like 10 times more than a tweet.
Way more.
So there you go. That's a lot of characters for $5. So go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip and
Oh, by the way,
you
Allison,
know,
did you bite the bullet and get on Twitter Blue? I hear it's like breaking people to like give Elon Musk that
yes.
$8 a month.
Oh yeah, I did. We did. We now Honey Badger Radio is on Twitter Blue. So if you want to also follow our streams there, it might actually be better to follow them there because it's not as censorious there as it is on YouTube. In fact, I just saw Elon Musk like something that questioned current pharmaceuticals.
Oh,
And their outpourings. Pharmaceuticals and their leavings, pharmaceuticals and their clippings, shall we say?
And the clippings.
And you guys can decipher that, the clippings. And as we all know, this is just about the most extreme speech you can have now on the internet. And so if Elon Musk is not censoring that kind of extreme speech, I'm pretty sure he's not going to censor our kind of extremely baffling, I honestly think that a lot of the hatred we get is simply just like a Cro-Magnon encountering, I don't know, like a homo sapien, and just being like, I don't understand, kill, Guac, not no, kill. Just pure.
We should have observed the Prime Directive and just left them alone.
Yeah, we should have just. Yeah, everybody on this side of the community divide. We all should have just observed. Yeah, just leave the man apes alone.
let them have their bones and club weapons.
And their archaic ideas about gender and which, and ironically, they still think that they're freaking questioning anything when they question nothing. Anyway, so once again, that's a really long little screed. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Come on, guys, send something through so that we know.
Yep. And if you want, you can also send us Rumble rants, which are the equivalent of super chats, as well as super chats. If you are just too lazy to go to Just the Tip, I get it. We'll go from there. And I do think the quality of the streaming on Twitter is very good too. And also one of the things that's kind of neat about it is if you post comments on the video, it's sort of like lives on the surface of Twitter, if that makes sense. Like as opposed to a YouTube video which could disappear into the algorithmic memory hole. I think a Twitter video, especially if Allison has a decent number of followers, because that's where it's going to be where it's posting. I think that'll basically create more conversation for a longer period. Also, there's lots of people that want to fight on Twitter, and it's good that our enemies or our ideological opponents see the content and see people talking about it, because that's what we want. So, anyway,
okay, let's get started on this engaging piece of.
Yeah, let's
floss.
Yeah, let's see what these people have to say. So.
I mean, what a surprise to just what a surprise that someone would publish an article just fatuously praising women.
I would never have thought that was possible, considering we live under an oppressive patriarchy.
Okay, let's see what they have to say.
I'm going to skip the takeaways and just get into the article. Men have crewed every mission to the moon so far. But when we finally send humans to Mars, it would be wise to send only women, at least at first. Mind you, this wouldn't primarily be for fairness, a correction for the rampant sexism that denied American women the title of astronaut until Sally Ride's historic flight in 1983.
Oh, so it was sexism, and not just the sheer rate at which astronauts and test pilots were dying.
Yeah, all of a sudden... Yeah. Once space travel became safe, women were like, you know what? Why have you denied us this all this time? And it's like,
because men were making it safe.
Yeah, men were dying to make it safe.
Same reason.
Go ahead.
It's the same reason why the frontier was originally mostly male. I mean, if you look at those population, like the animation of how the population of the U.S. changed over time, and you just watch it. It just starts as almost like 95% male, if not more. And like the only,
Yeah.
like 99% male, and then the other 1% is probably some extremely satisfied whores. And then it just increases over time, more and more and more, as the West gains railroad access, as the West gains infrastructure and housing, and women start moving over. Why is that? Because it's dangerous. And then men make it less dangerous and more comfortable, and women start filtering in. It's the same thing with space. But of course, it's sexism.
Mm-hmm.
Reality is sexist. Reality is, and the funny thing is that the same women, many of the same women, well, I guess they won't, because these might not be TERFs, they will say that it's sexist that women weren't in space. Of course, women also weren't on the frontier, but nobody seems to say that's sexist.
No.
Like during the time when people,
they probably
men were
like to if they
starving.
cared about the frontier, like the history of that as much. They probably like to, but maybe they don't think it's
No,
all that.
but they don't.
It's not as romantic.
I guess not. It's not as like achievement orientated. It's just a matter of backbreaking work and starving to death.
Yeah.
So, who cares, right? It's just men did it, and then women came. But this is more spectacular because it's all over the news. It's a new frontier, and it's got all kinds of achievement attached to it. Same principles, though. Very dangerous to begin with as you starting to get a foothold. Gradually becomes less dangerous as you manage to start keeping those naked pink apes alive,
Mm-hmm.
and then the women are like, why? We weren't there to begin with. Why was that? What, the sexism? No. But the same people who say this, many of them will turn around and say, but trans women shouldn't be in women's sports. Okay. Well, do you understand the connection between men being on the frontier and men being in the first people into space and trans women not being in women's sports? Do you understand the connection there? Because there's a connection. It's called physical capability. Right?
Yeah.
And I know they're probably going to go into all kinds of easily refutable crap about physical capability. Not just physical capability, risk assessment. Because if you get into a bad situation, I've seen, like, people should really watch the way men reacted when they were about to die in the space program. Because that's really what we need in this program.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a guy, an astronaut, I forget his name. His capsule is going into re-entry, and something massive fails, and he's just narrating for the interests of science the last 5 to 10 minutes of his goddamn life, and then he dies. Perfectly calm.
Yeah.
Perfectly calm, still trying to give a contribution to humanity in the last few minutes of his life. Okay, have we ever seen a woman do that? If we can find one example, maybe we can assert things like women are just as capable, not more capable, just as capable.
Yeah.
But there is a quality there with a higher risk tolerance of being able to manage the stresses on the frontier. Okay? That if you don't have that high risk tolerance, you're just not going to be able to manage it. And it is a physical capability. It's an aspect of physicality. Mm-hmm. All right? So anyway, let's get into this nonsense.
All right. So this won't be primarily for fairness, a correction for the rampant sexism that denied American women the title of astronaut until Sally Ride's historic flight in 1983, but rather a practical decision based on calculations as cold as deep space. Available evidence bluntly suggests that women would be more efficient and capable crew members on long-duration missions away from Earth. All right, I haven't read this article. I'm going to ask you guys, why do you what and I'll ask you, Allison, what do you think they're going to demonstrate as evidence for why women would be more efficient and capable crew members on long duration missions away from Earth? What are they going to say?
I'm going to say
women are better at cooperating,
calmer, some shit like that. But I'm still on the space is cold thing. Yeah. Space is not cold. It doesn't have a temperature. Stop watching big blockbuster films.
Blow the air out of your lungs. And how long, I don't know if they're going to mention this, but how long do you think it takes to get from Earth to Mars? How long of a trip
6
is
months?
that? Does anyone know?
Pretty sure. I think it's 6 months, but I could be wrong.
I was going to say, I think it's months. So that's a long time to be in a ship with women. So, all right, Dr. W. Randolph Lovelace. Oh, sorry, what was that?
9 months.
9 months. Oh, well, that's just enough to deliver a baby. Dr. W. Randolph Lovelace II and Brigadier General Don D. Flickinger the former chair and vice chair of NASA's Flickfinger, yeah.
Flickfinger. Yeah, this is a perfect name for this kind of...
For a guy who's going to head up an all-female mission.
Masturbatory puff piece.
Lovelace and Flickfinger. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Okay. And vice chair of NASA's Special Committee on Life Sciences originally made the pragmatic case for female astronauts in the late 1950s. Oh, you mean like the peak of sexism? The absolute peak of patriarchy? There was a guy going against the grain and saying, we want female astronauts. He probably just thought they looked cute in that bubble helmet. The duo noted that women are lighter and thus require less oxygen. They have fewer heart attacks. Their reproductive systems are less at risk from radiation. Of course, Lovelace and Fleckfinger were overruled amid the era's prevailing sexism. What are you gonna?
We don't
what, are you
want
gonna put a
women to
stove
die.
in the shuttle? You gonna put an oven there? Are there gonna be some dishes to wash?
What can you possibly need women astronauts for?
Like how they just put out there, like, it's just prevailing sexism. Like, there's just guys in suits with pipes, and they're like,
again,
you can't put a woman in space.
Same people. What would they say about trans women in sports? They'd either say, oh no, trans women should be in sports, or they're against it. You see where this comes from, conservatives?
Yeah.
Do you see it? Do you see where this comes from? Okay? People like this seem to think that it was sexism that kept women out of the incredibly dangerous frontiers.
Yeah.
Okay, the astronauts generally came from test pilots because that's what they were. They were strapped in a tin can on a bomb. Okay? So they came from test pilots.
It's like
you know
Wile E.
why test
Coyote,
pilots were men?
like on the rocket, you know.
You know why test pilots were men? Because something like 1 in 5 of them died. All right. Okay, so if we're part of a society that's okay with women running those risks, 1 in 5 dying, so that we can get to Mars, sure, let's do it. They weren't, because a headline like "This woman died as a test pilot" would likely get every suburban woman in the US in the 50s on the phone calling to them and saying, why did this happen?
Why didn't you just put a man in there?
And shutting the damn program down. It's the same principle behind prohibition. Why did prohibition pass? Because women in America said alcohol is a danger to women. Okay? Do you realize the pressure that these lobby groups, these almost all female lobby groups, put on politicians to make sure women are protected? And you think that they're gonna put women, like, you just put them in their gigantic slingshot and throw them into space like they did with men. You know, a couple of them splat and nobody cares. No, it's not the way the world works. So not only was there physical limitations, risk-taking limitations that women have biologically, and if you ever say something like trans women can't compete in women's sports, you have absolutely no basis to say that they were sexist in the 50s at keeping women out of these occupations that they physically couldn't do. All right? There was also far higher than today, I guess. Maybe this has changed somewhat. Belief that women should not be harmed and that they should be protected.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. All right, let's continue. So I just want to say that I doubt that they excluded women because they don't like women. I think that, first of all, it wasn't likely that women were willing to do that. But even in that, they were probably valuing women's lives more than men's. And that's literally probably what it was. So, NASA scientist Jeffrey Landis reiterated the argument in 2000, applying it more strictly to deep space flight, where the only resources available are the ones you take with you. Well, women are on average smaller than males. Women use less oxygen, consume less consumables, produce less carbon dioxide. They have lower mass and take up less volume. The argument for an all-female crew is simple. Such a crew would require considerably less support and allow a smaller spacecraft. This would produce a considerable savings in costs, he wrote. Oh, we're talking about cutting back on the budget to go to Mars? Like, what? And also, do women actually, like, use less oxygen? And
yeah, they probably do because they got smaller bodies.
Consume less consumables?
But they're also... like they also tend to require more heating and more climate control.
Yeah.
Like men can suffer to a higher degree.
I can imagine being on that ship and they're all like asking for somebody to change the air conditioning. It's a little too high. It's too cold in there. You know.
Yeah, it's generally men are more tolerant to temperature shifts.
Yeah.
And this kind of just blanket environmental misery.
Yeah.
But like if there are women out there who just want to be slingshotted into space, 1 out of 5 of you go splat. That's good for them.
Oh yeah.
But you also have to deal with a society that's not really happy. Like, I don't even understand the feminist complaints. It's like, society doesn't care enough about women's safety. Why doesn't society put women in dangerous jobs?
I'm in danger.
Like, why does society prevent women from going into war and going as test pilots? Oh, goddamn, what the hell do you want? Do you want society to be so keyed to any kind of danger to women that every single retarded thing that you say is a danger to women, society just whips itself into a frenzy of like a dog with a squirrel, just, I gotta stop it, I gotta get that thing and stop it. But at the same time, you should be free to do whatever dangerous thing you like. Mm-hmm. You're asking for the impossible, as usual. All right, let's keep going.
All right. Long-term space missions. Recently published study put some concrete numbers behind Landis's contentions. Scientists with the space medicine team at the European Space Agency calculated that the average female astronaut requires 26% fewer calories, 29% less oxygen, and 18% less water than the average male. This translates to some sizable resource savings. A 1,080-day space mission crewed by 4 women would need 1,695 fewer kilograms of food compared to an all-male mission. That's about 10% of SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket's payload to Mars, valuable space which could be filled with additional scientific projects and equipment to ensure a safe and successful mission.
Or get this, you could use jockey-sized men.
Yeah, you could use smaller men.
Yeah, they exist, ladies.
That's true.
Yeah, I know that they're not in like that 6 or 777 category.
I know they're trying to make the case without going to the equality, but I mean, I just don't think there's going to be a team of women willing to do this. I mean, I don't even know if there's a team of men willing to do this at this stage. So, and I don't know that this stuff, they keep talking about saving on money. And that's, I mean, look, if they crew, let me just put it this way: if they crew a ship to Mars with an all-female team, and they've never done this before, they've never sent Earthlings to Mars, okay, and those women die, like they have some mistake or they land on the planet and like fucking, you know, Amazon Martians women like kill them or whatever it is. It's gonna be like, oh, why did you send the women? It's just like you said, you know, why did you send the women? We need to shut this down, and now we're not going to Mars. I mean, I have my doubts.
Why did you set those women up to murder them? Why do you hate them with your horrible patriarchal mind testicles? You hate the women. Just,
why did you use your thrall to make them go to Mars?
Yep. That's what it'll be. That'll be the headlines.
Yep.
NASA uses thrall to force women into Mars. They would have cared if there were male astronauts. They wouldn't have died. Oh, God.
Yeah. Do you remember, speaking of women dying in space, do you remember the Challenger in the 80s? It was like a space shuttle that exploded, and there was a female teacher on board that died. I mean, there were a bunch of men that died too, but... Do you remember that? Allison?
Yes, I remember it, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm just checking.
No, I remember.
Yeah, I don't know, like, if people got all, like, bent out of shape, but I do remember that there was a lot of focus on the woman who died in that explosion. And that's all we heard about, you know, so... There was a female astronaut, too. That's Sally Ride, the one they mentioned in the article.
Unfortunately, reality is that when a woman's involved in something, the disaster becomes more disastrous.
Mm-hmm.
It's very bad. It's very bad publicity. And, you know, it's like if you're running a program in which women are dying, people are not going to be happy with it.
Yeah.
You know, men die and everybody's like, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
You know, that's just par for the course.
Yeah.
As soon as women start dying in your program, everybody starts investigating. You get bad publicity. You lose funding. And feminists, I don't know, like, do you want a society that just doesn't care about women dying? Well, then you're going to have to let go of all the violence against women rhetoric. Like, honestly. Why would it matter any more than it matters when violence is directed against men, and violence is directed against men significantly more often?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a short article. I don't want to spend like 2 hours reading it.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, what I'm saying is that, like, regardless of who they send, like, if they were able to go to Mars, do some stuff, and then come back and not be dead, I'd be shocked. Honestly, I think that no matter who we send, okay, like, so if we send men as well, like, I would be surprised if they came back. So, all right, but anyway, I think that most astronauts that are gonna go on flights like this or whatever, there's got to be a part of them that's aware, you know, that they may not come back. All right, so...
Yeah, the biggest thing that men have is, suicidality.
Yeah.
Checkmate, feminists.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you need for this.
The high suicide rate probably makes for pretty courageous astronauts. I don't know.
Oh, God, that's dark.
I know, okay, it's very dark. I'm sorry. That's dark.
No, I set you up for that.
You did. All right. Beyond physical practicality, there are psychological reasons women might be better suited to extend missions away from Earth. Oh, really? Let's find out. Statistics show that all women groups are far more likely to choose non-confrontational approaches to solve interpersonal problems, and most definitely are more likely to deal with the situation without resorting to violence, which could be a big problem on a Mars journey where the crew must live in close quarters for 2 to 3 years, Landis wrote. Numerous sociological studies have shown that women in general are more cooperative and less given to hierarchical social structures.
Really? Where are those studies?
That's bullshit.
How about no?
Yes, because certainly women are the ones whose cooperation has built society.
Yeah.
I mean, to a degree, it is on a social level, but really, when it comes to goal-orientated cooperation, I think that men have got us beat there. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Do you think that
Uh,
like male astronauts are just like low impulse control having like primates? Or do you think they're highly trained, very stoic guys that are doing shit that like probably harder work than most others, like soldiers, firemen, Coast Guard, whatever, right? This is like at
yeah,
a
but
whole
also,
different level.
okay, so are most definitely more likely to deal with the situation without resorting to violence. Okay, have they integrated statistics from women's prisons and lesbian
Of course
relationships
not.
into this? Of course not, because if you look at the statistics in women's prisons, they're horrifically violent, even relative to men. And we're not dealing with like NASA astronaut men. We're dealing with basically the worst male specimens in society, the ones with the least amount of impulse control, and they're still less violent than women in prison. And gay men are less violent than gay women in their relationships. So where are these statistics coming from? Like, the other thing is they deal with non-confrontational approaches without resorting to violence. Well, non-confrontational doesn't actually mean non-destructive.
Yeah,
Okay?
of course. Of
Because
course.
if you got three women emotionally ganging up on the fourth, and the fourth commits suicide halfway through your mission, that's pretty destructive. Oh, none of them confronted her about their problems, but they all made it known that she was a problem. You know, that kind of shit, that kind of
Yeah.
violence completely goes under the radar, but it's what gets people to kill themselves. That kind of exclusion and interpersonal aggression. And when you look at the bullying statistics on the web, women top the charts. Like, most of the bullies on the web are women. And most of the people they're bullying are women. You know, I got that. Like, the instant the main channel, Honey Badger Radio, started to get a majority female viewership, holy crap did I get bullied. Like, the women were just vicious.
Really?
So I got a personal experience. Yes. I mean, there were some women who weren't. They appreciated the message. Oh, did I get a lot of shit, though. As soon as I got more attention from women. Men are like, and I mean, I guess part of it is because I'm an advocate for men's issues, but actually, honestly, no matter what you advocate as a woman, you will get bullied by other women. And that's statistical reality. So where is this coming from? Is are this stereotypes? Are these self-reported studies? Because I'm pretty sure there's some stuff that contradicts this. Numerous sociological studies that's shown that women in general are more cooperative and less given to hierarchical social structures. Why is there this belief that cooperation is somehow oppositional to hierarchy? Because it seems to
that's
me
weird, isn't it?
that a hierarchy of skills that's cooperating towards a goal is a lot more efficient than a bunch of people in a circle trying to divide the resources of the capsule between them. Okay? Like, because that's what I've seen when women get into groups.
Yeah, those are not mutually exclusive concepts.
That's
actually
not
the way that most men, like when they're working as teams, like in construction or as athletes, it is hierarchical and cooperative. Yeah, that's a thing that can happen.
Yeah, so cooperative in what sense? Well, yeah, because women's groups are sort of like resource distributing entities. Everybody cooperates and tries to, I guess, get equal resources, but that's not a good group dynamic for when you want to get something done. A cooperative hierarchy is a much more efficient way of getting things done.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think these are really bad assumptions. All right, so just over 60 years ago, the Women in Space program put 19 female aviators through astronaut training 60 years ago, with more onerous testing than NASA gave to the original Mercury 7 astronauts. The 13 women who passed arguably top the men both physically and psychologically. Oh, really? Arguably.
Arguably. Boy, that's a mealy mouth.
Mm-hmm. That
you
is,
know what the primary reason why women shouldn't be the ones going to Mars? Because of the attitude of this article.
Yeah.
The sense of entitlement.
A whole truckload of words that had no meaning.
The entitlement. Like, they're coming at this from a place not of service to humanity, but entitlement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. You don't come from this from a position. From what I've seen, you know, there is ego, there is hierarchy and competitive hierarchy with men, but many of them come from an attitude of service, that they are serving humanity. That man who basically kept reporting even as he was going to his death.
Yeah.
That was an attitude of service to humanity. It's completely absent in this.
Yep.
Where's your attitude of service? Get rid of your freaking entitlements. Where's the attitude of service? You're going to do something horrific that most likely will result in your death. Attitude of service is what you need to get through that. And you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see it in women. This attitude of service. Just this freaking endless sense of entitlement. You're not entitled to go to Mars. You're not entitled to these positions. You're not entitled to men making something and then you having access to it because you're a woman. Because you were excluded from the thing that they were making while they were making it. Well, they were making it. All right? This is what boggles my mind. When women supposedly make something like domestic violence shelters, which they didn't, they got government funds and a lot of rich men donated to make these things. Mm-hmm. They turn around and say, make your own, to all the people who advocate for male victims of domestic violence. Okay, so if you make something, even though you didn't make it, but if you perceive that you make something, that women make something, men have no right to it. But when men make something, like universities and certain industries and the space program, women somehow are entitled to it by virtue of having been supposedly excluded from it, even though they often express no real interest in it.
Yeah.
Like, I know you know what the 13 women who arguably topped the men both physically and psychologically, yet they weren't taking the risks. Like, those were some hellish risks that men were taking as test pilots. Okay?
Yep.
And arguably, you know that when you say something like this is arguable, that means they didn't.
Yeah, it means
arguably
that it's just not a thing.
Means that they didn't top the men.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably topped. In what sense? Where is the data? Okay, because when you say arguably topped, that is a weasel word. No, there's no weasel.
That doesn't. It just
There's a link. There's a link. Let me see. Let me see this shit.
Click on the Women in Space program link. Maybe that will show us something. It might not, but...
It's so infuriating. All the women who are like, oh my God, we were excluded. And then at the same time as they say, but we need to exclude trans women from our sports. But you won't take the logical steps here.
Yeah.
Okay. 60 years ago, NASA scientists found that women would be better astronauts. Their work was never published.
Aw, boo-hoo.
Okay, all right. Okay, so... Okay, but their idea was soon squashed when President D. Eisenhower deemed that astronaut candidates should be recruited only from the ranks of military fighter jet pilots. At the time, women were barred from the role because it was incredibly dangerous. Mm-hmm. All right? So what they're saying is that because men went through a war, they got to be astronauts. Oh, gee, howdy, boy. What a nice actual, appreciation for men's sacrifices. But of course, this exclusion of women, and they never talk about the exclusion of women from the draft.
No.
Okay, so these two people, they were more than up to the challenge of spaceflight. So with private funding and a facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the duo decided to challenge esteemed female aviators to complete NASA's onerous astronaut exams. 28-year-old trend-setting pilot Jerry Cobb was the first selected. Cobb was bombarded with the same test the Mercury 7 astronauts took and passed the program with flying colors, except she didn't run the same risks. So essentially what you're saying is you're putting these women who have no history of service in wartime, which itself is, or no service in the military, which is itself an indication of the ability to manage the stress of being strapped to a freaking canister on a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is one of them. Okay, we were already in a position to say that certain qualities of the female space pilot are preferable to her male colleague. Oh God, let's hear how he appeals to the angel in the kitchen or the house when he says, Lovelace next secured more funding and began searching for additional female pilots to undergo astronaut training at the new Women in Space program. Again, this was conducted outside of NASA's purview. Okay, they describe... eventually recruited 19 female candidates, each of whom faced the exact same rigorous testing schedule that male astronaut and candidates endured, with the addition of a gynecological examination. Some of the women's tests were actually more difficult, like the sensory deprivation test, in which the women were immersed in pitch-black sound-deaf isolation tank filled with skin temperature water for hours to challenge their psychological stamina. Someone sounds like he has a fetish. Two of the women, Rhea Hurl and Wally Funk, endured the tank for 10 hours before staff terminated testing. NASA merely placed the men in a soundproof dark room for 2 to 3 hours. John Glenn later confessed to writing poetry on a tablet during his test. Oh, did that make him fail his test? Did they not, at the conclusion of the Women in Space program, 13 of the 19 women, 68% passed. For comparison, 18 of the 32 men, 56%, selected by NASA to undergo official testing succeeded. Okay.
Yeah.
The same rigorous testing, the exact same, except for the sensory deprivation tank. Okay. Yet they still don't have a history of performance under pressure in the kind of context that would be required. And the other thing is that how do we know for sure that they were the exact same tests? Oh, details of the program were never published in a scientific journal, but 2 doctors would later critique it, as well as the women's suitability as astronauts in a published paper where they argued that the menstrual cycle could affect psychological and temperamental performance during spaceflight. Okay, ladies, if you want excuses for your behavior during menstruation, then you are going to have to accept limitations on what you are allowed to do because of menstruation. If you're going to have your own kind of special, crime of passion because you were menstruating, then you have to accept limitations. One or the other. World won't work with both. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is when, again, there was men were dying in the space program to bring it to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was almost like one of those things that somebody has to take this risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just the reality. It's like imagine the first time, mankind tried to sail across the ocean, or when they became interested in seeing what was under the ocean, with submarines and whatnot. I mean, there had to be a lot of ways that they got it wrong and people died. But that's just that's the nature of human existence. It's like we're constantly, looking to see what's beyond our our world, whether that's in space or in the deep sea or underground or whatever. And it's risky because we don't know. It's the unknown. So people die. They, that's just the way it is. So, okay. Just over 60 years ago, the Women in Space program put 19 female aviators through astronaut training with more onerous testing than NASA gave to the original Mercury 7 astronauts. 13 women who passed arguably topped the men both physically and psychologically. The first crewed mission to Mars, which will likely not occur until 2029 at the very earliest, will require every advantage possible, so it only makes sense that an all-female team should be the first to step onto the red planet. That's the end of the article. It's not very long, but
Okay.
yeah, go ahead.
So 18 people have lost their lives, men, including I think one woman, because of the Challenger one, the Challenger space shuttle.
Yeah.
I assume that they would mention it if the Columbia space shuttle had a woman on it.
Yeah.
Because the only person who is mentioned in this article is Christina, the teacher from New Hampshire.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. So this is this was during the time that these women were supposedly wanting to go or being tested. This was an incredibly dangerous occupation. So one of the things that they say is that there was no so John Glenn and John Carpenter were two astronauts from Mercury 7 and other representatives from NASA said that they disagreed with women going into space, pointing to the lack of interest in women in pursuing astronaut training, the lack of women who were qualified, and the prevailing social order did not accept women in this role.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Prevailing social order, well, they knew the dangers, and they wouldn't accept putting women in that kind of danger. Period. And it's not because they hate women any more than not, you don't want to put women into this kind of danger because you don't want them to die. That's the same impulse behind caring more about violence against women than violence against men.
Yep.
Okay? Like, you want a society in which women can freely go and get themselves killed in high-risk frontier activities, then you need a society in which you say, well, violence against women, and people say, so? Okay, well, women are as legitimate targets of violence as men.
Mm-hmm.
So, shut up. We don't care. Like, you gotta make your decisions here, folks.
Yeah.
You can't have it all ways. All right?
Yep.
If you want a society that cares more about violence against women and has special names for it, then you are not going to have a society that's going to tolerate highly dangerous activities for women on any kind of wide scale or incredibly public it's just not going to happen for you. One or the other. Choose. And stop trying belly aching about sexism when the sexism you appeal to, quote unquote, the paternalism you appeal to on one area also has detriments in another area. Ugh. Anyway, women can now be astronauts because it's safe enough and everybody agrees it's okay.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's true.
So this is all irrelevant anyway. However, a trip to Mars, like Brian is saying, is going to be quite the endeavor. And I'm pretty sure everybody will be shocked.
It's not a walk around the park. It's not a walk in the park.
Yeah.
And
it's not even going into orbit. And, I'd be shocked if anybody survives it. So if we want to throw 4 women up on our little slingshot into the brick wall, sure, let's do that. I don't care. Like, I don't consider violence against women to be more important than violence against men. I don't consider women's lives to be more important than men's lives. If it were up to me, I'd throw women into combat. Yep. Hell, I'd have it so that we just throw women into combat for a few wars. Let's even out the numbers there. That'd be good. And I don't mind slingshotting a bunch of cans of female spam into space and having them hit, a brick wall and die. Who cares? As far as I'm concerned, I don't. Let's go for complete equality in expendability as well as benefits.
I have just the women to send too.
I think that list is going to be interesting.
No. Well, there's plenty I could think of, but I don't really wish, any terrible thing to happen. But if you want to, let's assume that they make it. I say we send Karen Smith, Gretchen Wieners, Regina George, and Katie Heron, which are the women from the movie Mean Girls, I think that will go over very well. So, I don't want to. I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of obvious to be like, let's send the feminists, but really, they're not going to qualify to do any astronauting anytime soon. So, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, I mean, you want to see some relational aggression? There it is, right there. So, send the Mean Girls is what I say.
Or send the trans women.
Oh yeah, send trans women.
Yeah.
There's probably trans women trying to get into astronaut to G. I don't know what
Honestly,
you call it.
I imagine that in the future, all of women's gains in the astronauts, in like aviation, in science and engineering will be trans women.
Mm-hmm.
They'll just occupy those positions. The cis women will continue to act like cis women. And yeah, the world will just
They'll basically
continue
be back in the kitchen again. They did this to themselves.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, basically, the trans woman will be the preferred in every. They'll take over every single opportunity that people are creating for women to enter men's spaces. It will be occupied by trans women, and we will just be back to like the what is it? Sparta and the 300. You know.
Yeah.
Men going into hairdressers going into battle.
Yep.
You know. We'll just be back there. And biology will reassert itself. I don't know what the West is going to look like. It'll be interesting to see. But there you go.
Yep.
Might as well. Let's ride this. Let's ride this roller coaster to the end. I, for one, embrace gravity. I don't know. I embrace the strange and distorted future that we are embarking upon. Oh boy.
All right.
Okay.
So that's the end of the article. So I guess we'll wrap it up here. I didn't get any super chats or anything, but that's okay.
Aw. What?
Yeah.
Guys, show us some love. Send us some super chats. feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Or super chows. Actually, super chows are at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. If you are listening to this after the show.
I got a Rumble rant, though.
Ooh, okay.
So
cool.
NovaFan21 gives us $1 and says, if they want to justify sending a woman-only crew, they should have a similar one for men, but at a safe distance to watch the feminist meltdown. What do you mean by a safe distance? You mean like a time gap? I mean, the thing is that, like, I don't think the folks in the aerospace, like, industry are trying to create a gender competition. But I think that people who report on it and discuss it do. Even if they try to tell us, look, I'm totally not, saying that women have been excluded, but they were, experiencing like severe rampant sexism and it kept them from taking jobs. But I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you what history says to me. Even though women have been doctors, lawyers, scientists, pilots for like as long as those professions existed. So there were no men saying, I'm sorry, little lady, you can't do that. It just wasn't happening. But anyway, thank you, Nova Fan, for the Rumble rant. Appreciate it. I don't think there's anything else, so... But women are for Mars? You mean from... No, women are from Venus, men are from Mars. Maybe that's why women are going to Mars. To look for some good men, because there's none on Earth, apparently. According to them. So, all right. I guess we could wrap it up, Allison, if you want. We've gone for about an hour.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
So once again, if you want to send something after the show is done, please go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we'll just hand it back to you, Brian.
All right. So let us know what you guys think about this. I'm curious what do you think will happen if we send a bunch of women to Mars? They'll be gone for probably 2 years or so, because it's going to take them like 9 months to get there, and then they're going to have to stay there for a while, probably a year, and then 9 months to come back. So we're looking at like 3 years minimum, right? But hey, Peter Jackson made the Lord of the Rings movies in 10, so I guess if we could wait for those, we can wait for this. So let us know what you guys think about this. Do you agree with any of the things that they've said, or do you agree with us? Do you disagree? Let us know what you think in the comments. All right, so if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment like I said before, and please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Be sure to follow us on Twitter where the live streams also occur. That's at HoneyBadgerBite. And we'll talk to you guys in the next video.
Right, activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.